Welcome to our live show. This is awesome. We're learning new things every day. Okay, well, there we are. We're ready to go. So let's get into it. Morgan, Blake, and I met through Tim Parkin's group, which is a group coaching group for marketing directors that Tim has so graciously allowed me to participate in as a agency owner. And so that's been a lot of fun. Learned a ton. Met a lot of cool people. And the other day we were in that group chatting about some different things, and we decided, hey, why don't we get on LinkedIn and talk about what you're doing right now? And because I thought it was really interesting. Why don't you introduce yourself and what you guys do at your company, and then we'll jump into this.
Yeah, definitely. My name is Morgan Blake. I'm out of Huntsville, Alabama. My company is Construction Marketing Online, and we run paid ads for the construction industry. So sometimes that's home builders, home services, and some heavy equipment.
It's awesome. So paid ads is sort of your world.
It is, yeah.
And as we were talking about this topic, you mentioned that, well, we were saying like a lot of the people I have on my podcast are founder CEOs of second stage growth companies. They are, sort of just getting in. They've maybe had a lot of sales efforts, building their pipeline and growing their revenue. And then they get into more marketing. And generally, it's going to include a paid side of it because that's how you get the most exposure the quickest. Um, it runs the gamut between the founder themselves actually learning how to do it to having a full blown marketing team that is handling their paid ads. So I know you've seen lots of different versions of teams and how they handle ads. But what I thought we could do is just sort of talk broadly. I know you're in the construction world specifically, but
hmm
there's a lot of companies that operate like that that could glean some information from this. So I thought we could talk kind of broadly on paid ads. What are some of the major things that you see that people are doing that maybe they shouldn't be doing? And just maybe add some practical wisdom for them.
Yeah, I. It's funny. With marketers, I think we classify ourselves a lot B2B, B2C, and by industry. But um, when I do ad audits or take on new clients, it's usually some of those high level things that are broken, that are pretty universal and even cross channel. So one of them is data being unclean. So historical
Mhm.
data just not being tracked well. Um, I would say, I think in the last year, I've audited a lot of accounts, and I've only seen one that was set up really well with tracking, which is just wild. And so, especially in this age of computer learning, it's becoming even more critical. If you're tracking your goals and you're telling an algorithm like this is a win for me, and then it's set up wrong, that win isn't, you might say, okay, a lead is a win,
Mhm.
but accidentally have it tracking a page view or a click. I see that all the
Mm.
time. And then the computer learning is doing its job, but people think, oh, it's not working, or it's just declining, and it's because you're feeding information in that's wrong.
Yeah.
And so, and then also just on the CRM side too, if you're using a lot of, you can use a lot of your list and your data in your paid campaigns to retarget or to
Mhm.
target people similar to past customers. But if your CRM data similarly is unclean and you've got kind of a mix of customers and vendors, if you're feeding in bad things, you're going to get, poor results out of anything, any channel.
So going back to the fundamentals of
Mhm.
making sure you're tracking the right things. Can you give me an example of a campaign that maybe you've been in recently that would spell that out, right? So like, what does it look like from what you're calling it to what does it look like to actually track the proper thing?
Yeah, I think Legion is one I see a lot where it will people will have it set up. I worked with a company recently. They did have it set up where it was a page view, which is not. This is where with a marketer you never get a clear answer, right? You get like maybe, perhaps, because it's all technically complex that
Mhm.
we don't want to just give these universal answers. And so a page view is not bad, right, for a
Mhm.
lead, because if it's a confirmation page view, that is a lead. If that page only shows up when someone's giving you your information,
Mhm.
but they had it on a home page, and so
Mm.
they were thinking, oh, we've got thousands of leads in platform, but we're not seeing them come through our CRM. Something's broken,
Yeah.
and they're just tracking on the wrong page, and it's such a small little error, but then your computer learning within Google, when you have certain smart campaigns or smart bidding, or you're using certain bid strategies, is telling it win, win, win 1,000 times over in a month.
Yeah, so you're
And
training it.
you are training it,
Yeah.
yeah. And then when you take over something like that and you fix it and you give it a real lead, it's this system has a really hard time, because suddenly you're going from like a $1 or $2 lead, or even a 50-cent lead, to
Mhm.
a more expensive actual lead that matches up with your CRM, and the
Right.
system is just like, whoa, and you've got to restart with the computer learning. And so with that particular company, we saw like this dip, this huge decline, and it's slowing down, where Google's like, whoa, 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 something's bad, and it starts pulling back, and it can be tough. These are
Mhm.
huge shifts in the system, and with Google Ads, it's definitely not an evergreen product. I think that's a run itself
Yeah.
is just crazy. But it is a product in general that does not like large shifts. And when you start putting proper data in, a lot of times that's a huge shift,
Mhm.
and you'll need a window to kind of build back up.
Yeah. How often do you see cases like that where the company is doing something that is just egregious? I mean, like sending them to your homepage is it's almost like probably need to step back and not spend any money until you figure out how
Yeah,
this is working. But like there, I would imagine that you probably see a lot of that all the time, where it's just
yeah,
kind of unclear as to how to connect A to B.
yeah. I would say upwards of 90% of the time, people's goals aren't set up right. Like I said,
It's
I've
crazy.
done a lot of audits in the last year. I don't even know how to quantify it, and only one. There was one where I was like, the
Me
person that
too.
you're working with is doing a great job.
Yeah.
Keep working with them. And it was
Yeah.
a very validating experience for them, and a
Yeah.
really fun one for me.
Yeah. So I could imagine. And what makes me think is all this money that's getting spent with Google with very little results,
Mhm.
and it's mostly due to user error. Um, let's start with that because
Yeah.
I have thoughts on the other side too. I mean, you probably see a lot of user error. So then,
Yeah.
what should people? What do people need to do? Do they need to just take a step back and take a Udemy course, or like what? Where do they need to go from there?
Yeah. I think taking a step back is always good. Like, go back
Mhm.
to the fundamentals when something doesn't work. Um, Always. Are you targeting the right people? Does your strategy that you're using in that product align with your company goal, like your high level year end goals?
Mhm.
These are the places where people are missing most often. And then all that trickles into all the small changes. And I would say, when I start working with a company, there are always small changes, like little settings and stuff that require that expertise on the back end, that's going to give you efficiency. But
Mhm.
then there's always these big misses too, where people set these things up in a rush, and then they never really go back. And you might say, like, oh, I'm going to put this URL in for now, and then when I get the real one, I'm going to go back and put in all these ads, and then you miss one, and it's running for years for companies to 404 page or something. Those things happen all the time because there's not that prep on the front end.
Yeah.
And so when I work with bringing on a new company, I'm always giving them a campaign plan, and we're
Yeah.
going through the keywords, we're going through the ads, we're talking through their customer. And a lot of times there's this, I don't want to do this. I want to rush, rush, rush. Let's just get it live. I trust you. And it's like, no, we got to do this,
Yeah.
because the likelihood that we catch it later is so
Mhm.
much lower than if we just start right. The best optimization is a good setup. I think
Yes.
an old coworker, Zach Pratt, used to say that, and I just think that's genius.
Agreed. I think this is the case. There are some cases in business where you can flub it a little bit, take some shortcuts, and you can get there. But this is one of those cases where you really do need the fundamentals really do matter.
Yeah, it informs everything that you do. And I think, you and I had a chance offline to chat through, the unclear goal piece. I brought up that as a big one.
Yeah.
Um, and again, that's just when everything's not in alignment from a high level, from
Hmm.
from literally the company's number one. I go ask the CEO what they want for the year. That big goal, or what they want for the next 5 years, that big goal has to trickle all the way into even a campaign setup, or else you don't know you don't even know where to start because
Mhm.
you look at all these metrics um and I think a lot of this comes from, unfortunately, from agency speak. Agencies always want to paint this picture of good. You tell a good story regardless, make people
Mhm.
feel good, and that's how you retain business. But what it does is it creates this confusion where you think all metrics should be trending in a certain direction. And the reality is some things should be going up and some things should be going down
Mhm.
based on these big goals. So for example, like if we clean up audience and you were start serving these ads to the right people,
Mhm.
you may see less impressions. Less people see your ads, but more of them click, more of them buy. So that's trending in the right way. But if you pull out just that impression or that cost per thousand impressions,
Yeah.
it looks like it went up 800% in cost. And these like these can look like red flags because agencies have sort of programmed a lot of in-house marketers that you're looking for this positive, 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 and so they get in there and they kind of lose sight of the end goal. And
So
it's like,
so
yeah,
with construction companies specifically, since you work with them primarily, what are some of the goals that they would have? And then maybe we can extrapolate that out to other companies.
yeah, and a lot of it's mostly revenue. So it's going to be sales. Sell a
Okay.
home, sell a service, sell a piece of equipment.
Mhm.
And for me, sometimes that's B2B and sometimes that B2C, and there's very little difference.
Okay.
Um,
How do you see that? I mean, I see the world of B2B and B2C very differently.
I think it's a little unique in certain industries, but
Sure.
you selling heavy equipment, for example, to like a sole proprietor, they're
Mhm.
behaving online very similar
Mhm.
to um, your kind of B2C market. It's
Yeah,
just the timeline for sale is going to change drastically based on the service or the product.
and the cost, yeah.
Yeah, and the cost, 100%. And
Because I
so,
mean, a backhoe might cost $150,000, or something like that. I don't know what they cost, but probably very expensive. So that's gonna take longer and be a smaller market, I suspect.
yeah, it definitely changes the timeline, but in terms of your setup, in terms of getting to know your audience and
Mhm.
then making sure your message resonates and doing the testing
Mhm.
and even um, I, I think of everything as custom. Like there's no two companies I work with that have a similar strategy.
Mhm.
Um, and so in that way, it doesn't, for me, it's not a big shift from a B2C to a B2B company. Now, I
Sure.
think if you start getting into like e-commerce where you're selling product over services, that does shift quite a bit.
Yeah.
Um, but it's all custom, and then it's all the timeline shifts, the goals shift, the audience shifts, the messaging shifts, but all that has to be custom to you anyway, because you could be selling HVAC services, and then 2 blocks down there's another person selling HVAC, but if you can't differentiate the differences between your two businesses and communicate to
Mhm.
your customer why the benefit of going with you.
Yeah.
um
And messaging is probably huge.
yeah, messaging is huge, and I think Google ads specifically is more straightforward
Mhm.
than a lot of people think. I think we're used to like the TikTok and the
Yeah.
Facebook and the Meta and the Instagram, and you want to stop the scroll. I think we hear that a lot.
Yeah.
And with your search engines, you just want to communicate as fast as possible and as few words possible. I can solve your problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
Because
it's yeah,
well, especially yeah, with search, it's high intent. The intent is there. They're searching for it, versus being passive or being interrupted on social.
exactly, yeah. And I think the desire to get really creative there, it kind of goes back to what we're talking about, where it's like you don't understand your audience. You have to understand your audience. You have to understand what they're doing in each platform,
Yeah.
and that's where it gets custom.
That's
So
right.
it's the strategy is the same
Yes.
in that you're starting with the audience and you're starting with their problem and how they speak and understanding them.
Mhm.
And then it changes as you consider their behavior and what they're doing on the platform.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, a lot of the work we do is helping these B2B, mostly B2B companies with podcasts, and so we live in the content world, creating content, for the sake of driving demand and creating brand authority. And basically the easiest way to say is like all the connective tissue behind building trust. But if you're also, so if you're a construction company specifically, and you're doing that for those reasons, because there are a lot of relationships you want to build in those ways, then when you're running ads, you have to dial that back into your product or service message and make it much more logical, much more, user intent, bottom of the funnel kind of. There's still some, mid and top funnel stuff you can run, but when you're talking about selling stuff, I've heard, and I really subscribe to this idea of like really not selling to people through content, um, but then running ads to sell your wares, so that people can really build trust with you and not feel like they're being sold at the end of a podcast or at the end of a YouTube video or a TikTok or whatever, and they feel really much like they can consume and go deep with you, get to know you as a brand. But then when they're ready to buy, they can find your ad.
Yeah. I don't know. I'd have to think about that. I'm actually a big fan of all of the channels.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, I'm probably biased towards paid ads, of course,
Hmm.
because I work in that and I've seen them work over and over and over again for companies, even the ones
Hmm.
that say it will never work for us. It can, it should.
Yeah, of course.
Um,
It's but if you have your stuff like sorted, right? If you have
yeah,
your messaging dialed, your audience, knowing your audience, their behaviors, all those things, that gives you your message. If you have that sorted,
yeah.
then you're much more dangerous to play up the funnel on paid.
Yes. And I will say I think in terms of selling through content, a lot of times you're adding value because
Hmm.
you're understanding the same problem
Hmm.
that you're trying to solve when people are low funnel searching or
Hmm.
looking on, stopping the scroll on Meta, whatever it is. You're trying to solve the same problem, add value,
Hmm.
and communicate that you can solve the problem.
Yes.
And then with the content, so the real question maybe is just how strong do you make the ask, right?
Hmm.
Because like people can understand on a level that you can solve their problem, but I think sometimes we just forget that call to action too. Like you have to
Yeah.
actually ask them for their
Yeah,
business.
that's right.
Um, and that's critical. And if you don't ask,
Yeah.
you will not get it. So it's how strong do you make that call to action
And
in a
it could
content
look
piece? Yeah.
different at different parts of the funnel. If you're using content like Tim, in the way he describes it as a cookie,
Hmm.
you have your cookie, to generate leads at different parts. Well, your call to action is going to look a little different than your sales call to action on an ad. Um, so yeah, you're right. There's different ways to approach it.
Yeah, and this is where I'm being the stereotypical marketer where I'm like, maybe I don't want to give a and that's you and I both have been doing this for a while. I think you've been in business, what, 14 years? Is that what your LinkedIn said?
Yeah, something like
So
that.
longer than me for sure. But the more you learn, the more you learn you don't know. And so even this past year, there's some things that I've gotten to work with some brilliant marketers on, and they said I want to do this strategy with paid ads, and I've been I don't know if that'll work, and like let's just test it, let's validate it,
Yeah,
and
right.
they do, and so that's opened up my eyes a lot. I've come from agency background, um, where we didn't do a whole lot of paid ads in combination with content, like running SEO and paid ads and working together and making sure those are feeding into each other or sending ads to boost content. Video has been converting really well. And a year ago, I would have said, "Well, you want to run a lead gen YouTube campaign?
Mhm.
That's insane." And now I'm like, "The go for it." It's for some brands, it is their top converting lead generator, and so
Yeah.
it's just one of those things too where it's I'm just happy to say most of the time I don't know. I don't
Mhm.
know, and then you just test it
Yeah.
and you keep testing and start with a small budget and build.
Well, it's so interesting that you work with B2B and B2C. I hadn't really thought about that. Um, where my world is really heavily B2B. It's all very
Yeah.
relationship oriented, it's connection driven, events, things like that. And, obviously when you start talking about marketing, you get into podcasting, YouTube, and then all your shorts. That is where people will consume your content mostly, to follow those things. And email. We'll do email newsletters. but the world that you live in is really it's really blended because the platform of paid, especially search, is gonna work on both B2C and B2B. How does that work for you when you're working with, in probably the same day, you're working with a B2B company, or someone selling business, or someone selling business to consumer? Are there any major differences that you have to take into account?
Um, yeah, I think the biggest difference is just the size of the basket, like the size of the sale.
Mm,
Um, you can test a lot more with a company that is selling $100,000 piece of equipment because the goal, the cost per result is a little bit more giving. Whereas if you are working with a small or mid-sized service-based company, um, every dollar that swings one way or another on that cost
the
per
margin's not
sale,
there. Yeah,
yeah, it directly affects them. And
sure.
so I think you just being cautious there. And then I would say on one of the learning lessons I've had in the last couple of years is the small there is a such thing as too small. Too small of a budget to run successfully on Google Ads.
Yeah.
Um, you get efficiency with scale,
Hmm.
and then you also get de-efficiency with scale, which is like this all this technical language, but there's just, there's usually this spot where you can get a certain cost per result or a certain cost per sale, and then as you scale up, you want to kind of spend, for a lot of companies, you want to spend as much as you can while you're still having a good margin on your sale, where it
Yes.
still makes sense, the deal makes sense. But for small companies, sometimes, spending too little, you can't even run your ads, or you can't even buy the amount of clicks that you need to get good results. And if they
Hmm.
would spend, quite a bit more, 2 times their budget, it would be a good product for them, but they're not comfortable doing that. And then just being able
Hmm.
to say, like, I don't think this is the path for you.
Yeah.
And that's where I say I love all the channels, and and so just being able to sit on a call with someone and say, I don't think this is the product for you, but you could try this and refer out. So I'm also blessed with a really good referral network.
Yeah.
Um, and I love the strategy side too. So I actually like to, when I get on a call with someone, and disqualify them from a paid ad conversion, and get to kind of brainstorm and think through, like, how can you do this organically, or how can you
Yeah.
kind of grassroots this up from the
Yeah.
ground. And
Yeah.
it
That's
and
great.
it's those become this kind of a fun call too, because I'm doing that for my business. There are
Hmm.
certain things that are I'm not at a scale to do for my business because I'm still small. And so
Yeah.
um, I don't know. There's this these are bonding, some bonding calls. Like, I like when I get on the phone with someone and they don't need the amount of sales that a product would generate even. Like, that's a crazy call I had recently where they're interested in ads, but they're like, "I only just want one customer." And you're like,
Yeah.
"That's I don't think you should do this.
Yeah.
This is not a turn it on, turn it off solution. Let's think about something else."
Yeah.
And then it ended up just being this really cool call where I got to pick this person's brain, talk about business, and just
Yeah.
congratulate him. I'm like, I've like that's the first for me,
Yeah.
where I get on the phone and I'm like, I can't take any more business, but maybe one. And you're like,
Yeah.
congratulations.
Yeah. Yeah. Whatever you're doing is working.
You might just want to pour into your referral side and
Yeah.
not spend the money.
That's right. Now, do you help your clients with all the different platforms, or are you primarily working on paid search?
I would say Meta, paid
Okay.
search, whether that be Microsoft or Google, some paid LinkedIn. With just my current mix, it's not as much of that because they're not advertising in the same way.
Yeah.
Like I said, even the B2B is a lot of um, the decision makers not necessarily on LinkedIn in the same way
Hmm.
that,
Yeah.
software for sales or something like that. So
Yeah. Right.
so not as much of LinkedIn. And then I have really good referral partners for some other services that I actually love doing business like that, where I have a person that does SEO I work with a lot on a couple clients, and we get to be coworkers and share information and do reporting calls together, and got a good videographer, and so that has been fun, is learning how to work with other small businesses
Hmm.
to replace a full service agency in some ways, and they
Yeah.
get to work with specialized experts in each piece, and we work together as one.
Yeah, that is fun. That's unique too. I've had the privilege of working in those scenarios occasionally, but they don't always. They're unique, and it's hard to get the right people that are aligned in every way, from a company culture side to execution side, and it's a lot. But it's good when they do come together. On the Google side, my I don't spend a lot of time in that area, but I have in the past and have helped my clients with it a little bit and have worked with partners who have helped my clients. Um, and we've had mixed results, so it's sort of like, and I'm curious to know what your thought is. With some clients, it's been really great. And then all of a sudden it was not really great.
Yeah.
And we couldn't figure out why it was changing so much. I kind of attribute it to a casino where the house always wins type of thing. And and maybe I've missed it, quite possibly could have, but I really am waiting for a class action lawsuit to come down because of Google spending everyone's money. It just seems kind of crazy. I mean, if like you were saying before, with like 90% of the people you talk to don't have their stuff set up right,
Yeah.
that right there alone shows you how much money is being wasted for the small business owner. So I'm curious from your side, and don't say anything that's going to incriminate you. I don't want you to have to go into witness protection program. Choose
No,
your
I
words wisely.
I've probably been too openly critical of platforms in the past, and I don't think I'll back away from that. I- that's it's no different from really any service or product that you're going to buy. You have to think about who's making money and what is their goal and what is their objection. And not everybody is just out there to take money and not add value. I'm not trying to say that, but
Right.
um we have seen, and it's not just Google. I'd say this is across all paid ad platforms really.
Hmm.
We've seen them move more and more towards models where more data is hidden every single year. They're pushing towards computer learning that favors scale and spend above results.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, they are very, very large companies for a reason. They are making very, very large profit margins.
Hmm.
And so and it's been interesting on the kind of agency or kind of a third party or external side when you're
Hmm.
doing someone's marketing. There's been this movement, especially on Google, to sort of cut out the middle person or the agency and make it more user friendly.
Hmm.
And there's been a lot of fear in past years that is an agency or is a marketing partner going to become redundant. And I've seen the opposite actually happen, which is a lot of times my job when I come in, I think of it as I have this fee, and I keep it very transparent. Like, here's your ad spend. You can see it. I run a lot of people's in their own accounts, so they own
Yeah,
everything.
it's
And
great.
then here's the fee. My job is that you walk away with so much efficiency that the fee just feels like, well, duh.
Yeah,
Like, I,
like,
I happily pay you.
yeah, you were already
Um,
paying this, but it wasn't going anywhere.
And so a lot of times people are actually spending too much because they're
Yeah.
wasting a lot, and some of that's in the keywords and some of that's just in the back end settings. Like, when you go through and you do an easy setup with Google in the most user-friendly way, you will be serving your ads 100% of the time to the wrong people in the wrong
Hmm.
places. And so that's where some of the expertise comes in, where it's like there are so many back end settings that we can turn off and narrow, 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 narrow. And so
Hmm.
while computer learning is awesome, I am no longer in the camp of running campaigns only with manual bid strategies. I stay there too long, to be honest. Computer learning is awesome, but then you have to have that human that is taking all the signals, that's looking at all of these stats and pulling back and saying, I do not want to spend there. I do not want to spend there. And And so my strategy is almost always to go more narrow, more narrow, more narrow, and just put as many constraints around the system as possible so
Yeah.
that you don't go wild. And then to your point, and this is like, I guess it keeps me in a job, so it's good, but every 3 to 6 months, things just go berserk on a
Yeah.
lot of accounts, and it will
Yeah.
just be random. It's not necessarily this big system change because it doesn't align across all clients at the same time.
Yeah.
But everything that's been working for 3 to 6 months now is just awful, and overnight things just bottom out, and then you start over and you rebuild in different ways, and you have to kind of start from the ground up sometimes. And that's just an interesting thing that happens. And
Sort of
so
phenomenon. Yeah.
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 And I think that's where um, when I work with business owners who are owner operator of their business, they're running their own marketing, they do not have the time to monitor. And so you can accidentally overspend, type a number in wrong, not see it for 5 days, spend a lot of money. You can also not catch an algorithm change, not catch one of these moments where you're talking about where it's like everything's working and it just doesn't anymore.
Yeah.
Um, Google would probably say that's end user behavior. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. Sometimes it
Yeah.
is. Um, COVID's a good example where user behavior changed overnight, search terms changed overnight. Um, some words tied to that became popular search terms. And if that was a name, if that word was in your company name, you had big problems overnight. So things do happen. I don't know that it's all tied to that, but
Yeah.
that's where you get that. If you have a good marketing partner, a good agency, they're monitoring it daily.
It definitely it's complex, and I would suspect you earn your fee probably over and over, not only on just the audit and getting rid of waste, but also when these big phenomena events happen where you're there looking at it, you can make the changes quickly.
Yeah, it's for me it's usually a kind of a losing situation for the first several months because there's so much upfront work, and then
Yeah,
you have these big times too where it takes a lot of
rebuilding.
unbalanced. And if you're owning your business and you're operating it, you don't have all that time to just pour into
That's
these sort
right.
of things. And so but yeah, I think that's where transparency in ad spend helps a lot too. Um, as a business owner, and that also has changed my shift it shifted my thinking so much when I shifted from just working on ad accounts and spending other people's money to also having my own money invested in my own paid ads
Hmm.
and really just feeling the other side of it.
Hmm.
And so it shifted how I do business, and a lot of people say that's silly. Like I've actually kind of gone against a lot of advice even with not doing long-term contracts,
Yeah.
because I do think I don't like them on my
No,
side. I don't want to sign a
we don't do
long-term
them either.
contract.
Yeah.
And if you're not continuously challenged to get that return on ad spend because you feel any kind of safety, you're not going to be at your prime. And I
Hmm.
don't. I don't want to run a business where I'm not challenged every day to get better. And
Right.
I can't, I'll run myself into the ground accidentally. So I
Yeah.
actually like the accountability of having to month to
Yeah.
month to month just continually
And I believe
prove
too, because
value.
we operate the same way. I believe that people are not really just buying the deliverables; they're buying the extra value that you bring to the table. That relationship, that sort of, what you might call a strategic partnership, where you're thinking and working on their business outside of the deliverables, um, and that's going to come naturally to businesses like ours if we're doing our work well. And so what that really is you're building in trust. And if they know that they can come work on their other part of the business and trust that you're managing
Yeah.
this, and it's adding value in sales, but also in the other things that are set up there, then that's worth more than just trying to look at what they're paying for what they're getting.
Yeah. Well, and I imagine this is even more true on your side with helping brands really build their brand, build their voice, build the podcasting and
Mhm.
follow through. As business owners, you, oh, the desire, or maybe, I don't know, there's a desire to self-sabotage there that you constantly fight against.
Yes.
Um, as much as you want success, it's just every day waking up and deciding I will not stand in my own way today.
Yeah.
And so I imagine like having, I know even just from the couple interactions we've had over the last
Yeah.
year, I see a lot of value in that for you because you can come in and just be like, this is tactically so much simpler
Hmm.
then a business owner is going to make it in their mind.
Oh yeah.
Social media and
Yeah.
podcasting is so overwhelming. Putting yourself on video in any context
Yeah.
is so
Yeah.
overwhelming.
That's
And
right.
so to have someone to come in like you and just break it down and be like, these are the
Yeah.
tactical things that we're going to do. And they're so manageable because you don't have to do the big thing. You just have to
Mhm.
do all the little things and the big thing will happen.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because that's the problem. That's the big barrier I had for myself when I started. I wanted to start a podcast for the longest
Yeah.
time and never did because of all the things. And so finally, I had that first episode, that I published, and I'd had uh, well, actually, I think Tim was my first interview, Tim Parkin, and he's a friend of mine, and so it was natural, but it was still nervous, and like we talked about, the things, whatever marketing stuff, and then after that, I had like two, three, 4, 5 episodes, and I kind of got a rhythm, and I was like, oh wow, this big giant of a thing is not really that big giant of a thing. It was all these little things that I had to overcome myself. So you're right. And I think that probably played true to you too when you ran your own ads. Once you start running your own ads, you feel the pain from the other
Yeah.
side, and you're much more. I mean, honestly, I can talk about podcasting all day long because I run one, and I have episodes that go live every week. So, I don't think there's any better example than kind of what they say, eating your own dog food, right?
Yeah.
Doing your own thing, so you can speak from that perspective.
Yeah, especially, and it's totally different when you're talking to like a director of marketing and then,
Mhm.
a CEO of a company. And I have the privilege of talking to both throughout the week
Yeah.
sometimes. And yeah, you definitely every yeah, it's just different perspective on money. You feel it
It's
differently.
true.
Um, you feel the opportunity cost differently in your own company. And director of marketing, they are so many of them are so diligent and they're such good stewards of marketing budgets. And this is not a crack at them in the slightest. I actually think that you need someone in that role to
Mhm.
strategically spend so you don't cut yourself
Yes.
off at the knees.
Yes.
But when you talk to a business owner, especially in some of these, like right now, people are feeling uncertain about the economy and uncertain about the future. Um, and so a lot of times it can be this opportunity cost that's not the same for an employee because it's not
Mhm.
the opportunity cost of spending it here or there, which exists for everyone. It's the opportunity cost of spending it here or there in marketing or here on marketing or laying someone off. Or if I don't spend it here, it's this weighty thing
That's right.
that and it can be hard to stay on a tactical plan because the ifs ands of the future get in the way
Yep.
for a lot of people. And it can, um, I think, for all of us, having someone that you can bounce ideas off of and someone that can tell you, just be there and listen and help you realize when things aren't catastrophic and then also help you realize when things are like let's shut
Yeah.
this down and start over.
Yeah, right, right. Yeah. Some voice of reason.
I value the ones that I've got in place around me so much, and,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think we both get to be that for other people, which is really
Yes.
cool.
It is cool. This has been an amazing conversation. Thanks for jumping on with me live. Before we go, how did you get into what you're doing now? Like, how did you get into the whole paid ad world?
I don't know. Like,
Just
gradually over time.
some
Um,
serendipity.
yeah, yeah, I actually in undergrad, I studied classical music, which almost no one knows about me anymore.
Interesting.
Um, and I started to get paid to do that, and I realized I don't really like this at all.
So
Uh,
that was your you graduated with that degree.
yeah,
Okay. And
undergrad.
what instrument?
Voice, like classical. Yeah, I wanted
So
to sing
so
like
I
opera.
so I went to Stetson University, and I went on a voice scholarship.
Wow.
And so I was there the whole first year on that track. But very quickly I realized, like, I don't really want to learn music theory, and I don't
Yeah.
really want to study classical music. I'm not going to be a music teacher. So I switched to communications and eventually had kind of a dual communications business, which was much better fit.
I think, I didn't make that realization quick enough, but my I just been all over the place in my career, and but it all tied in, from like even
Sure.
with that you're telling stories and you're understanding human emotion, understanding people, and all those things
Hmm.
helped me so much. And then I got lost. I was like, I don't know, everything I thought is wrong, and I did a year with volunteer work, disaster relief with FEMA Corps.
Cool.
I got into like a whole lot of math and a whole lot of grant writing,
Oh
very,
yeah.
very technical skill set.
Yeah.
Um, that set me on a path where I was like, I think I want to do more of that. I got my degree in not for profit business at the University of
Cool.
Alabama,
Oh
took
nice.
marketing there. Um, and then just throughout jobs after that, it just sort of bloomed where it's like the understanding of people, the storytelling, and then just the knack for numbers and data and math I've had my whole life
Yeah.
always put me where I was succeeding in this area.
Yeah.
And I've tried to pull out of it a couple times, um, for whatever reason, and I always landed back in it. And then I just sort of, I think what I just realized I love this. I just want to do it
Yeah.
my way.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, then once you have that switch, you're like, "Okay, this can work. This can be the thing," and sounds like you have a good mix of data or
yeah.
numbers and message or writing.
Yes. And then being self-employed or working for yourself or working for your own company has
Mhm.
given me that last little piece, I think, where I grew up on a small farm. My dad's a farmer, and
Yeah.
I wanted that kind of business where like not necessarily a straight up handshake business, but I wanted that
Yeah.
trust. I
Sure.
I felt like agency side, you're always working with people that come into the room just a
Yeah.
little, just a little worried that you're going to try to pull something over on them.
Mhm.
And so I thought, I wonder if it's possible to do all the things I like about this job, but not have all that tension in the relationship. And that's
Yep.
sort of, um, that's
That's
my
awesome.
guiding force right now. Is like,
I
how
love
can
it.
I have all that?
I love it. I think you're on the right path. That's seems like, yeah, you've definitely hit the your stride. So that's cool. Well, thanks again for being on the podcast
Yeah,
and
thank you
going
so
live on
much.
LinkedIn. I'm trying to do this more with people. So I appreciate you coming on.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and if anybody wants to reach out to Morgan here on LinkedIn, you can find her. And where else? Where do they find you if they want to have you do it like a paid ads audit or something like that?
Um, constructionmarketingonline.com. My email is info at constructionmarketingonline.com is a good
Perfect.
one. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks again.
Thanks, Lee.